I came into contact with industry leaders, technical scientists, both active duty and later retired, as well as intelligence officers, generals, admirals, colonels, people who directed intelligence or human intelligence collection and analysis directorates at the DIA and the Central Intelligence Agency, who reached out to me to have me do some foreign UAP intelligence analysis and assessment. And so I have been exposed to so much in the classified realm that I can tell you definitively that there is a there.
It has been a busy week. There's a lot going on right now. In just the last 7 days, like 32 hours of new interviews have dropped with amazing people. Jesse Michaels did a interview that was like 3 hours long with Harold Malmgren, the late Harold Malmgren, which turned out to be a deathbed confession of everything he knows about the program. Just 2 days later, Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp did it again, dropped another interview. This was a 46 minute long interview with a guy named Matt Brown, who is a whistleblower, an intelligence analyst who worked in the Pentagon and had access to the classified server system where a lot of intelligence material is transacted. And in his role, doing what he normally does, he stumbled upon what later became known as the Immaculate Constellation Program. And he is the author of the document that became known as the Immaculate Constellation Document. We'll link to it in the show notes, but it's up on, I think, Nancy Mace's website. And in that same week, as all this is happening, there was a hearing in Congress, and I think it was kind of an informal thing, but Avi Loeb was there, Lou Elizondo was there, Eric Davis was there, Anna Paulina Luna, I think her office kind of made it happen. And for about 30 minutes, Eric Davis completely melted my brain. And it's astonishing. There's a lot happened that day. Lou Elizondo got himself into a bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, over this photograph that was initially suspected to be, I guess, or presented to be a UFO, but turned out to be bogus. Like a few minutes later, people on Reddit found it was bogus. And that was embarrassing. But this Eric Davis bit is off the wall. Now, if you don't know who Eric Davis is, that's okay. I'm going to read his bio. Please humor me just for 2 minutes. It's worth it. I'll set this whole thing up for you. Who is Eric Davis? Dr. Eric W. Davis. Davis is a distinguished astrophysicist and theoretical physicist renowned for his pioneering work in advanced propulsion systems, quantum field theory, and the study of unidentified aerial phenomena. He earned his PhD in astrophysics from the University of Arizona in 1991 and has since been at the forefront of research into cutting-edge aerospace technologies and the scientific investigation of anomalous phenomena. Say that 5 times fast. Throughout his career, Dr. Davis has collaborated with various governmental and private organizations, including the National Institute for Discovery Science, NIDS, that's Robert Bigelow's thing, where he served as a staff aerospace astrophysics researcher. His work has often intersected with classified programs, focusing on areas such as warp drive concepts, traversable wormholes, and the potential for faster-than-light travel. Dr. Davis is also known for his involvement in analyzing materials purportedly recovered from UAP incidents, contributing to the broader discourse on non-terrestrial technologies. His extensive research and publications have made significant contributions to our understanding of advanced propulsion physics and have positioned him as a leading voice in the scientific exploration of phenomena that challenge conventional physics. So that's who we're talking about, Eric Davis. So let's take a look at the top 5 moments. I thought we would break this down at the top 5 mic drop moments, and we'll just take them one by one, and then we'll come back and talk about them. Here's clip number 1 from Eric Davis's mind melter on Capitol Hill.
And so I have been exposed to so much in the classified realm that I can tell you definitively that there is a there. The human race, basically the world's biggest governments, like the United States, our adversary China and Russia, at least as far as I know, have had the occasion to recover craft that have either landed or crashed or both in their territory or even outside of their territories, and have taken those back to the most sensitive of their programs that they've ever had. These programs are even more sensitive and more well hidden than Manhattan Project was, or the modern nuclear weapons industry and the U.S. military and the Department of Energy programs to maintain and upgrade and modernize our nuclear weapons arsenal. And so this is one of the most well hidden programs. It is hidden from congressional oversight and always has been. And it was hidden by the action of President Eisenhower, who instituted presidential emergency action directives during his administration.
Okay. I hate when people say that, when other people say this, but I'm going to say it. There's a lot to unpack there. Let's unpack it. The United States, our allies, our adversaries around the world for decades have been capturing or recovering crashed UAP or UFOs in their territories, outside of their territories, around their territories. That's nothing new. There's no new information there. We've known that. I mean, we've known that forever, but it was most recently confirmed, I think you could say, by Harold Malmgren, who confirmed David Grush's account of the 1933 Magenta, Italy crash that was recovered by Mussolini's government and then turned over to the United States after the war via the Vatican. This whole thing reads like an Indiana Jones movie. So there's a long history of craft recovery and retrievals. There's nothing new here, but that just sets the table for where he goes next. And where he goes next is very interesting. He's saying that the UFO reverse engineering program is more classified, more highly classified at, I guess, by all governments than even the most sensitive nuclear programs, up to and including the modernization and maintenance of our existing nuclear stockpile. And that makes sense. I mean, it's terrifying, but it makes sense, right? Like the nuclear stockpiles of the world could destroy all life on the planet many times over. We know that we live under that threat of constant annihilation every single day. If you live in a major city, if you live near a major city, if you live near a military base, if you live anywhere near anything important, there are nuclear weapons pointed at you pretty much all the time, and have been for many, many years. And that's terrifying, considering how geopolitically unstable the world seems to be, and getting more so every day. But now, when you consider that NHI technology, UAP technology, is orders of magnitude beyond anything that we have, the destructive potential there is it's so powerful. It's not even, you can't really even conceive of it. I mean, it's like Death Star level power. Destroy everything all at once in the blink of an eye. Even the delivery system, even the propulsion system, forget about the energy system, although you need that to make the thing work. But the propulsion system, being able to go from point A to point B instantaneously, means that you could send nuclear weapons anywhere you want, like you were sending an email or a text message. So imagine that in the hands of anyone, right? To say nothing about the shitty politicians that we all have right now. So existentially, that's a terrifying prospect. And the idea that this technology is basically what we would consider magic from our vantage point, and that it exists at this level in the hands of psychopaths, is cause for pause, for sure. And I think it brings to mind something that Harold Malmgren mentioned in his interview with Jesse Michaels when he talked about how Kennedy had this dream of reaching out to the Soviet Union and basically starting a dialogue, working towards disarmament and peace, a peace process to end the Cold War in a peaceful way, and set about the task of building a prosperous future for all of humanity, which is essentially the Star Trek vision of the future. And of course, that didn't happen. And Malmgren says that's one of the main reasons, probably the main reason why Kennedy was assassinated. Which is interesting because if you think about it in that context, it means that we are all living in the dystopian timeline that branched off from that event. And there's another timeline where they actually did this. Kennedy wasn't killed, and maybe the world was a much nicer place. But very interesting to hear Eric Davis say this stuff. This is stuff that Stephen Greer has said for many years. We're hearing it mentioned here, of course, so it sets the table for where he goes next. Let's watch the next clip, and then we'll come back and discuss it a little more.
These directives are not shared with Congress. They are classified. And when the Freedom of Information Act was instituted in the 70s, it is not those are not subjected to the Freedom of Information Act request. These directives provide cover for actions that are associated with the retrieval of these vehicles and the scientific and engineering study of them. And that takes place within the industry. What happens is the Department of Defense offices, CIA offices, they create shell companies. They give a sole source contract to the shell company who passes the money to a selected group of defense industry firms. And those firms will take that contract money and turn them around and use that as internal funding. It's called internal research and development funds, which they give to their own people inside their company, their own employees, to do the reverse engineering and analysis and study of these recovered vehicles. And so,
okay, this is interesting. Now we're starting to get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. And it was actually the tail end of the previous clip where he says that the secrecy surrounding the cover-up in the program in general was launched by President Eisenhower as some kind of an executive action that took place during his administration, and then, I guess, operates in perpetuity. This is a very interesting point. But he goes on to expand on this, and he says that this establishes cover for all of the activities that have to take place under the umbrella of recovering and studying reverse engineering non-human craft, which sounds like it covers up some very dark shit. It sounds really, really weird. I think about what was done in the name of like truth, justice, and the American way during the Cold War, right? Like some of the things that we later find out about, like MK Ultra, for instance, which we only find out about because of a leak, and we would have otherwise never known about this. There's stuff like this the CIA does all the time that's really, really dark. We never really hear about it. Can you imagine when the stakes are this high, above nuclear, above any nuclear level of secrecy that we would have for a nuclear program, by orders of magnitude? Imagine the latitude that these intelligence agencies and military organizations and paramilitary organizations, corporate and otherwise, that have been operating for all these years have. Imagine the latitude they've had. What kinds of dastardly shit do you think they got up to? So that's an interesting question. And I suspect that's a large part of why there's so much resistance to disclosure, because when that conversation happens, they're going to bring out the woodpile. It's going to open a can of worms that nobody wants to touch. We didn't even talk about the funding. Just think about this. It's completely immune to any kind of congressional oversight. It exists outside the system of congressional oversight. So Congress approves these budgets. They go to military contractors for R&D programs. The military contractors take the money, turn it into some kind of internal program to fund something else under a different name, and then they carry out their research on non-human technologies. It's interesting to hear Eric Davis say this, because that is exactly what Colonel Phil Corso said when he was interviewed. I think it was by George Knapp. I always reference this interview, and I always forget. I think it was George Knapp in the early mid-90s, 1993 or 4. And Colonel Corso was the intelligence officer tasked with setting up the initial conditions of the program. He was the one who took the crash materials recovered from the Corona crash and Roswell, and distributed those to various industry partners who would, like IBM and Texas Instruments and other companies that got their hands on this stuff. And Corso said that these were handled as internal research programs, normal everyday programs. So if you were to look at the paperwork surrounding this program, it would look like any other research program that was there for a legitimate reason. But actually, what they were doing was looking at UFO, UAP materials. And Eric Davis backs that up. And he's saying that billions or probably trillions or more of taxpayer dollars have been funneled into this black hole of a system, and we have no accountability for it. We have no idea where it goes, what it was used for, what was built with that money. So these are really astonishing statements to hear again from someone like Eric Davis, who has the resume that he has, and it gives more weight and gravitas to the this part of the story. And I definitely think that it's going to be a money thing. It's going to boil down to tracking the money and figuring out where all that went. It'll never happen. They're never going to do it. But you're more likely to get the Epstein client list before you're going to get the budget line items for the UAP reverse engineering program. But anyway, let's go on to the next clip, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
Can you please explain what makes exotic material that has been recovered from the U.S. government exotic? What makes it different from atomically and chemically?
It's actually a very simple answer. It's the way it's fabricated. It's the way it's fabricated. That's what makes it exotic. It's not a new element that's never been discovered and placed on the periodic table of elements. No. The materials are in the periodic tables. They're either radioactive isotopes that we already know of, or they're any of the other non-radioactive, non-actinide elements on the table. It's just the combination of the materials is unusual. It could be that you could say that that's exotic, but it's the composition. It's how you build the craft, the materials that form the craft, and everything inside the craft. It's quite exotic because one of the company's leadership was a young material scientist when he graduated with his doctorate in material science from one of the universities in Illinois back in 1970. And he was hired by Ben Rich to work with him and a team at Scopeless. That was the Advanced Projects Development Agency, I think is what Lockheed Aircraft called it back in those days. So basically, this is what he was telling me. He's an advanced material scientist, and he said, well, we could use the best diagnostic equipment we had back in those days, which was 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we could see the elements through mass spectroscopy that compose these structures. But when we look at how they're composed and structured, it's like nothing we've been able to fabricate or we've never been able to reproduce it on. And we have no extrapolated engineering or physics technology to tell us or inform us on how we can possibly fabricate this on. So they understood that it's the combination of the elements was very unusual. It's counterintuitive, but it's the way the materials are fabricated. That's what makes it exotic.
So it's the way the materials are fabricated that makes them unique and gives them their unique abilities. Interestingly, when Bob Lazar described the craft, the sport model craft that he encountered at Area S4, he talked about how simple the whole thing was. It appeared to be very simple. There were no moving parts, for instance. Inside the craft, everything was really smooth. It looked like it was all molded and injection molded out of one piece of material. And he said that the power unit, the reactor unit, was the size of a basketball, but could produce tremendous amounts of energy. And so it's been a matter of discussion for a long time how this could be. And it sounds like the actual materials of the craft are the magic. And maybe that these things are manufactured on a molecular level using some kind of, I don't know, nanofabrication technology, but times a million, or maybe there's some other form of engineering beyond that. I don't know. I've heard people say that these things are grown. These ships are grown. These craft are grown like we would grow a fruit or a vegetable. There's sort of there's some way that they grow technology, and this is how these craft are produced. I've heard other people describe them as being materialized all at once as one single object. There was a rumor going around from, I think it was a 4chan thing, who knows? It's on Reddit a while ago, that there was or are a number of bases that manufacture these craft on a uh, rotating basis. Like they make these craft as needed and they're mission specific. So each craft is designed specifically for the thing that it's there to do, implying some kind of master control behind all of this. A lot of interesting hypotheses about what makes these craft work, how they function. It's interesting to hear Davis describe the exotic way these materials are put together as the defining feature that sets them apart from everything else. Sounds like if we knew how they were made, we could make them. Now, it's also interesting because, again, and I mentioned this in yesterday's video, Mark McCandlish talked at length in an interview with Stephen Greer on his YouTube channel, which I will also link to in the show notes here, about craft that he called one the Flux Liner. And he drew these beautiful technical schematics of what this thing looked like. And it was a craft that supposedly a trusted friend of his had encountered at an air show, a private air show for aerospace industry people. And the Flux Liner was an anti-gravity craft that was sort of built like a clunky UFO that we would build once we have a really rudimentary understanding of how it works. And it's a fascinating interview, and he talks at length about how this craft works. But he said that when his friends saw them, they were dinged up, they were banged up, and they were put together out of off-the-shelf components. That was the main thing. So they understood at least some of the exotic physics surrounding how craft like this maneuver or, propel themselves. And they had at least built some functional anti-gravity craft at least as early as the 1960s or 70s, according to this interview, which is what Stephen Greer has said for a long time. So there's a lot here. It's interesting to hear Davis's take on this. But certainly there are accounts that we've heard in other areas that describe a program much, much, much further along than what Davis is describing. I mean, he's basically saying that the state of the art right now is like they understand what the materials are, but we have no way to duplicate them. I wonder how much of an impediment that actually is in reverse engineering other aspects of the craft and creating ARVs or alien reproduction vehicles made by human hands that function the way that an ET craft would. So some questions there remain for me, but great clip. Now, speaking of the reactor that Bob Lazar talked about, remember he said this thing was the size of like a basketball, and it looks like a kind of a coffee machine. It looks like a Bialetti coffee maker of some kind. To do the things that these UAP craft have to do, they have to create tremendous amounts of energy. How much energy, you ask? I'm glad you asked, because Dr. Davis is about to tell us. And let's listen. Actually, and watch Avi Loeb when Davis talks. Just watch Avi Loeb's body language. All right, let's take a look at this next clip. We'll come right back.
You talked for a moment, about the Nimitz incident, the calculations for the object to go from 80,000 feet within less than a second, 50 feet over the water. What type of energy requirement are we talking about?
Hundreds of times the total electrical energy produced in the United States annually. That's the kind of energy that is representative of the observed features and performances of UAP craft, especially in Tic Tac that the Nimitz encountered in November of 2004. And so it's hundreds and hundreds of times what the United States produces annually, like the electrical power. And so that compares really well with interstellar spacecraft that would relativistic or ultra relativistic being anywhere from 90 to 99% speed of light. The energy just is astronomically huge. So these craft, I don't have the security clearances I need to know to get access to the technical details, but I am made to understand that the craft are consistent in size with the Tic Tac, even double the size of the Tic Tac. That would be up to about 100 feet long by 50 feet diameter of that type. Boomerang-shaped craft, arrow-shaped craft, triangle-shaped craft, and so forth. The biggest ones that have been observed, especially that we investigated at units in 1999, involving Scott Air Force Base. That one was a 600-foot long craft, and it was about roughly 100 feet tall.
hundreds of times the power output of the annual total output of the United States to produce one maneuver, to do something like drop from orbit to 50 feet above the ocean and stop on a dime. That's how much power we're talking about. So either which is, I mean, astonishing. You start to speculate out from there. It's clear why this technology is such a hot potato. But according to Bob Lazar, they had the reactor disassembled. Like they had figured out how it works, what element 115 does, how that functions. And his assessment was that this was the method they were using to generate these tremendous amounts of power. But we're talking about astonishing levels of energy that seems to be unlimited, more or less, functionally unlimited. In other words, like you could throttle your energy expenditure as much as you need to, and whatever source you have is just going to scale to do whatever it is that you want to do. So that's, by itself, that's enough to end all life on Earth. Interesting point. And then I don't know if you caught at the end, he's describing a craft that was 600 feet long and 100 feet tall. He was talking about some of the various craft that he was aware of, that I don't think he'd seen personally, but he was aware of these. And if you noticed, Avi Loeb kind of gets nervous and his body language is he kind of chuckles a little bit. It's interesting to watch Avi respond in real time to Eric Davis. Okay, one last clip, and then this is the big one, though. This is the mic drop of mic drops. This is where Eric is going to talk to us about the actual alien races involved. And if this is the only thing you watch tonight, this is worth it. Here we go. Let's take a look.
Do you have, or can you comment on whatever species have been that have been piloting these craft? Are they large? Are they multiple species? What was their size? And how many are usually on a craft?
They're typically the multiple species people really like the grays, the Nordics. People have talked about reptilians and insectoids. It's not that they're reptilian or insectoid, it's that they resemble to the recipient of reptile or an insect type humanoid, because they have this head and four limbs and torso.
So large, small?
Human size, human scale.
And are there how many are a crew?
Well, the Greys I'm familiar with from investigating the crash at Corona, which is misnamed crash at Roswell. It's not the crash at Roswell, it's the crash at Corona, Mexico. Those were Greys, those were both tall. And the Nordics are typically human sized, probably, I'm from 5'6" feet tall. And same with the people who mislabel reptilian and insectoid, they're roughly that top height too. I haven't heard anything about anything 7 or 8 feet away.
Okay, I don't know if you're paying attention to Admiral Gallaudet and Avi Loeb sitting to the right of Eric Davis, but they are visibly reacting to what he's saying in real time, and it's funny to watch. But this is crazy. We're talking about, he's asked, what type of non-human intelligence are we dealing with? And he says there are 4 main types. Grays, which we've all seen before. I mean, you've seen a picture of a gray. Insectoids, reptilians, and Nordics. Very, very interesting. If you studied abductions or close encounters, and you look into the stories of people who claim to have been on board craft, they often talk about insect-like beings that seem to be, at least according to David Jacobs, the insect-type beings. They resemble praying mantises sometimes. That's what we're told. They seem to be, at least according to David Jacobs, at the top of the hierarchy. The Greys are at the bottom of the hierarchy. And he assesses this by saying that in all of the different accounts of abductees, the Greys are the ones who do the menial labor, menial tasks. So, and at the top, it seems like the insects are in charge, and the reptilians are below them somewhere. And then the Nordics, they look just like us, more or less, human-like, various types of descriptions, but more or less 6 feet tall, maybe a little taller. They look very Aryan, usually. Blonde hair, blue eyes, six-pack abs, low body fat, 10% body fat. Very fit. I don't know. The Nordics are always described that way. So 4 different types of non-human intelligence, 4 different types of species, and he's describing them so casually, like this is a very normal part of the conversation for people in the know. What do you guys think? This was the one that really blew my mind, because now we're starting to get into the real heart of the conversation. Who are we dealing with? And if there are any beings that look remotely human, that's going to be a real weird moment for the rest of us to come to grips with. But I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Don't be shy. Thanks for watching. And hey, if you're not already a subscriber, do me a favor. Please consider subscribing. It only takes a second. It doesn't cost a dime. And it is the best way to help us grow the channel and support what we're doing. You can also go visit us at teamnightshift.com. You can pick up a piece of merch. You can join our Discord server there. All kinds of great things for you. Thank you in advance. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being a part of Team Night Shift. I'll see you on the next one. Until then, keep looking up.